All right, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We're excited to be here with this great panel and kind of representative of our community, really being able to share some of the lessons that can be shared between K-12 and higher education. I think as we were prepping for this, we've all had conversations about how we've all had experiences in both, so it's kind of a fun way to bring the panel together and have conversation. So I'm Kelly Hoyland. I'm the Director for Higher Education Programs here at edtech. Excited to help introduce this panel, but I will let each of them introduce themselves first. So Mark.
Thanks, Kelly. Hi, everyone. I'm Mark McCormack. I am the Senior Director of Research and Insights at EDUCAUSE. I'm calling in from Nashville, Tennessee, and delighted to be with you all today. Sonya?
Hi, I'm Sonya Watkins. I'm the Chief Information Officer at the University of Central Oklahoma here in Edmond, Oklahoma. We're just north of Oklahoma City, about 20 minutes north. So I'm really glad to be a part of this conversation.
Good morning. I'm Michelle Watt, located here in Scottsdale, Arizona. I lead the IT department in the Scottsdale Unified School District. We're a K-12 school district with just over 20,000 students.
And I'm Monica Watts. I'm Senior Director of Learning Innovation here at edtech, and I have the pleasure of working with our state education agencies as well as our LEAs that are members of edtech. So let's go through the agenda for today. So we're going to be talking about what is EDUCAUSE. So Mark's going to walk us through what is EDUCAUSE, and then we're going to dive into 3 discussion areas. The first one being generative AI, not something you haven't heard of in the last year or so. So really excited to hear from our panelists about generative AI. And then our second topic is security and privacy, something that is very close to all of us in our everyday working environments. And then our third topic and discussion is on learning modalities. And we will have time for Q&A and closing, but I do want to remind you that as we go through, something comes up, a question, feel free to use the Q&A at the bottom of the Zoom. You'll be able to click on that and put your question in. And also, if you feel you want to chat, you can use the chat as well. So we want to encourage participation from the audience. Feel free as we go along to put your questions and we'll make sure those get answered.
Great. So the catalyst for this webinar today was the realization that between K-12 and higher education, our students are going to be encountering some of the same issues and challenges. And if we can foster some shared learning and engagement between our K-12 and higher ed leaders, we might be able to build a smoother, better handoff between the two as we serve and support some of the same students. So that's what we're hoping to foster today, is this conversation and cross-pollination between K-12 and higher ed on some of these shared issues that we have that Monica was just outlining. So just first, a few quick words about what EDUCAUSE is for those who aren't familiar with us. We're a professional association serving IT and technology leaders in higher education. That includes CIOs and other technology leaders, cybersecurity professionals, and teaching and learning professionals. Those are our core audience focus areas at EDUCAUSE. Next slide, please. So we've been around for more than 20 years, and you can see here that we serve more than 2,100 organizations, most of those being institutions of higher education, and more than 100,000 individual members. Again, most of those folks being technology professionals working at an institution of higher education. There's a lot that we do at EDUCAUSE to support our members, but one of those things is we conduct research, and we provide insights that our members can use to better understand their profession and better make better decisions at their institution. And so that's the role that I serve as Senior Director of Research and Insights at EDUCAUSE, and primarily what I'm going to be focused on with you in our webinar today. I'm going to give you some highlights from some of our recent research at EDUCAUSE, and then we're going to use that as a jumping off point for having some discussion with the other wonderful folks here on the webinar, looking at those connections between K-12 and higher ed. So our first topic, and again, this is no surprise to anyone, I'm sure, is generative AI. It's on everyone's mind. It's obviously very important And it has been the focus of some of our recent research at EDUCAUSE. And I think for me, the headline for you all for this section of findings is that we need to help our students get more comfortable with generative AI, not only as a feature of their education experiences, but also as a skill or competency that they're going to need for the future. So earlier this year, we conducted an AI landscape survey, and we heard from more than 900 higher ed technology leaders, and a majority of those respondents to our survey, 73%, said that some or most units at their institution are working on AI-related strategies. So many of us in higher ed are thinking about this and working on this, though I would say that it's still in its early nascent stages. It's still kind of a ground-up effort in higher ed with maybe individual units or departments taking it up. I wouldn't say that it's an established, fully staffed, fully operational function at most of these institutions yet. We are actually about to conduct a follow-up landscape survey later this year to the data I'm going to be showing you. So we'll be able to see if any of this maybe is changing or has changed. But we asked in this survey about what was motivating institutions' strategic planning around AI. What were the catalysts for doing this strategic planning? And you can see here, the most common motivator selected by respondents was the rise of student use of AI in their courses. So there's this acknowledgement that generative AI has started to become an important resource and tool for our students in their classroom, in the work of being a student. We also asked respondents, looking at the next slide, what their goals are, what their institution's goals are for their AI-related strategic planning. And you can see here, preparing students for the future workforce was the most commonly selected goal for these strategic efforts. And that just slightly edges out new methods of teaching and learning. So we have an open-ended comment in the next slide. This was one of our survey respondents, further elaborating on this focus on preparing students for the workforce. They said, AI knowledge and use will be skills our students will need. We view this as an expansion of our digital literacy commitment to our students. So what I want to highlight looking at these last few slides is that the student is central to how higher ed is thinking about and taking on generative AI. It's going to be a big feature of how students are experiencing higher ed as a teaching and learning tool, as something that's woven into their course experiences, and it's going to be a skill that they'll be expected to have and to develop. So starting with this slide, looking at our 2024 Teaching and Learning Horizon Report. For those who don't know, our Horizon Reports are futures-focused research where we gather a panel of experts to reflect on what the future of higher ed teaching and learning is going to look like in 10 years' time. And in the 2024 report, this panel of experts selected supporting AI fluency as one of 6 key technologies and practices that are going to be shaping the future of higher ed teaching and learning. And if we go to the next slide, here's what one of our expert panelists for this report had to say on this topic. Student AI fluency will be critical for workforce development. These skills need to be embedded in discipline-specific courses as well as general education courses. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to, I believe, Sonya and Michelle, and then to Monica and Kelly. And we have a few discussion prompts for you all to discuss as you react to these findings and some of these ideas. So the questions we're posing to you are, what responsibilities do institutions have to help prepare students for AI fluency and ethical use in their education? And then what can institutions start to do now to begin supporting these responsibilities?
Thanks, Mark. I'll jump in. Thank you for that compelling research. We also believe that this is critical for students' futures. And in fact, if we allow the implementation of the, AI literacy and the understanding how to safely and appropriately use generative AI, if we allow that to be as maybe uneven of an implementation as some other edtech initiatives have been in the past, that this is an equity concern, because this understanding is becoming critical for performing in the future of work. So we also see that as critical. And across the state of Arizona, we actually have a challenge. It's called the 3-in-3 Challenge, where all districts, no matter where they are in their journey with learning about and supporting this safe and appropriate usage, during the first 3 months of school, they are challenged to accomplish 3 tasks. The first is to clearly communicate which tools are safe for their staff and students to be using. So for example, in the SUSD AI guidelines, we update which ones have been vetted and approved and are supported for use by staff and students. And then to train teachers about the pitfalls. We all know that there are dangers with bias or hallucination with the use of generative AI, and that the human has to be in the loop, so to speak. So making sure that basic understanding is held by all of our staff, and then helping to adopt a system that our teachers can use to communicate with students about the appropriate use of AI. We've seen questions of, if I'm using a tool that provides some editing of work before I turn it in, is that an okay use of an AI-powered tool? And so really helping teachers to have the language and make sure they make space for conversations around each assignment and what is appropriate and acceptable is part of that initiative. So our first approach really is to make sure that staff feel comfortable using AI. And then, as one of your comments said, Mark, linking these AI literacy goals to our state standards around educational technology and computer science, and making sure that the alignment to what we're responsible for teaching students is clear.
I like a lot of the things Michelle highlighted there. And some things are very similar to what we're doing here at our university, but one thing we recognize is that the students are already using it in AI, and so we just want to make sure that we help to guide and influence how they go about using these tools. And what we recognize is it's already becoming an integrated and essential tool for a lot of careers. And so as we're preparing our students for workforce readiness, we want to make sure that we incorporate those things into the teaching and learning practice that we have. I think in higher education, we talk a lot about critical thinking skills is what we're giving our students. And I think in the use of AI, critical thinking will be more vital than ever as you're trying to make sure, did it hallucinate or not? Is the information that how I prompt, how I think about doing those things? And we're seeing that evidence of that in some of our courses, faculty that have embraced using AI as a tool in the learning practice. Even in our English class, we have a faculty member that uses it to encourage students to improve prompt engineering in terms of as they go to ask questions or use the AI tools. They use critical thinking and using multiple AI tools to see how it responds back in the writing and to critique that as well. So really good practices there. So it's not just teaching them the appropriate ways to use it personally and professionally, but it also means having that open dialogue between students and faculty on what the capabilities of the technology are, what it can and can't do. It's not going to replace everybody. And so we just have to reframe how these AI tools will be used and to kind of tamper down the fear aspect to just really show how it can be a partner to success. There have been other technologies introduced in industries across, and it has become a tool. It did not replace everyone, but it really helped expand or elevate capabilities or empower capabilities. And so that's kind of the viewpoint that we want to have regarding these technologies. So some of the things we're doing just to when we first started talking about AI, we definitely looked at how it would influence teaching and learning, but we also wanted to think about the productivity side for faculty, the tools and capabilities that it can have to create efficiencies even for them and supporting them in their instruction. So we've identified 4 pillars that we're evaluating AI on and bringing use cases to the fore. So one is supporting faculty instruction, student empowerment, business use cases. So again, how we use that in our every day-to-day, but also business, the workforce that our students will be entering. And then ability to automate activities and processes that we have across the institution. And a lot of that framework, we're actually using the One EdTech AI checklist that kind of helps to guide that process. We looked at a lot of different models and tools, but we found that one to be really embedded in the education practice. And so we find that to be a very great resource as we move forward.
Great. I think what you're both saying is very similar to what other institutions are saying. You know, most are trying to figure this out, figuring out the best way to help their learners understand how to do this and when it's appropriate and when it isn't, and have those conversations. The other day, someone had shared with me a job posting that had actual guidelines on appropriate use of AI in your job application process for that organization. That organization encouraged you to use it, but they said, do this, not this. You know, like, don't have it just write your cover letter. Help it to have you, you know, refine and adapt and improve. And so it was a really interesting conversation as you talk about preparing for the next wave of this looks like, but it's never going to fully replace the human, you know, in some ways. So making sure you're doing that. And we have a number of resources to share with you. And so here's a few resources that, you know, have come across in our community, things that we've done. So MIT has an AI risk repository. So this is a newer resource that just came out, and it's a great way for you, especially as leaders in this area, and you're looking at tools and you're looking at options and you're looking at ways to embed AI. This gives you a way to map across a number of different frameworks to think about what the risks are there. Great way to do it. Not necessarily for your students, but for you as leaders to look at those risks. Just last week, UNESCO released some AI competency frameworks. So if you're looking for an international perspective on what students and teachers should be thinking about in AI and what they should be able to know and do, those have just come out. Our AI preparedness checklist that Sonya already mentioned, this was created by a group of our higher ed community leaders thinking about what are the questions organizations need to answer as they start to embrace AI. So it's everything from organizational and policy, but also pedagogy and what digital literacy skills they need, you know, your learners and your faculty need to have. So that is there and available for you. And then the last area resource that we're going to highlight is part of our Trusted Apps program. We did launch a generative AI data rubric, and this is a quick, I think about 5 or 6 questions to help you understand where your edtech partners are using AI and what kind of control that you have in that data and who has ownership and how it's shaping models and things like that. So that rubric is out already, and then we're actually working with a community group to kind of grow and expand as this area continues to evolve. Just a reminder, feel free to use the chat if you have comments that you want to share, or if you have questions for the panelists, feel free to use those areas.
Great. Great, thanks, Kelly. So our next topic is security and privacy. And I think, again, what we're going to see as we look at some of the data is that students are increasingly important stakeholders in institutions' security and privacy practices. We know that end users, that human element, those individual persons who are using devices and accessing the institution's networks and systems, those are primary areas of risk for the institution. So my headline for you here in this section of findings is we need to train and equip our students for being safe and responsible stakeholders in the institution's technology ecosystem. So here I want to share with you a bit from EDUCAUSE's annual Top 10 research. This is a report that we produce every year. It's based on expert panel and survey data where higher ed technology leaders identify and vote on the top 10 issues that are driving technology strategy in the coming year. And you can see here that in 2024, the #1 issue voted by our participants was cybersecurity as a core competency. And this isn't just unique to this year to have this kind of issue at the top of the list. I think over the last almost 10 years, cybersecurity has consistently been ranked the #1 issue by our higher ed technology leaders for this report. I think 2021 was an exception because it was the peak of COVID and everything was out of whack. And I think we had 1 year where cybersecurity came in second place. But otherwise, it without fail is at the top of the list, and it's almost to the point where, as researchers, and of course, we like to be objective and let the data be whatever the data are going to be. But as researchers, we start rooting against cybersecurity every year being the #1 issue because it happens so consistently, and we want something new and exciting and different to happen. But year after year, without fail, here it is. So this is clearly a critical issue for higher ed technology leaders. And in this report, we call out the importance of bringing students in as key stakeholders in ensuring the institution's security. So you have here a short snippet from the report on this topic. Investing in training can help students and staff improve their digital skills while also learning how to better protect data, devices, their identities, and the institution. And the reason we call out the importance of bringing in students as cybersecurity stakeholders is that not enough institutions appear to be doing this. So this graphic is from a quick poll survey that we conducted last October on the needs and opportunities for security training in higher ed. And as you can see here on the left-hand side, the vast majority of respondents said that their institution is providing security awareness programs for both staff and faculty. And that's compared with only just over 1/3 of respondents who said the same thing for students. You can see in that middle box there. And then finally, you can see, next slide, from our 2021 Information Security Horizon Report. Again, this is coming from a panel of higher ed security experts. This recommendation to institutions that they focus on training for students as critical stakeholders in security. And I want to highlight that last phrase there specifically, that institutions should begin these efforts with students as soon as they arrive on campus. So with that, I'd like to circle back around to Sonya, Michelle, Monica, and Kelly to see what you think as far as the responsibilities that institutions have to help prepare students for security and privacy, and what institutions can start to do now to begin supporting those responsibilities.
I'll start on this one, Michelle. So as institutions build out their information security programs, if you're building out a robust program, awareness is part of that process. And as they do, you're thinking about all the things that the systems and the large things we put in place, right? We make sure that our systems have the capabilities to have strong passwords. We're using multi-factor authentication. We're keeping our systems up to date. We have mechanisms for faculty and staff to report things. Well, the same is true for the students as well. Those things that we're doing, these systems in place. And so highlighting these things for students, why do I have to use MFA? I think it's such a common thing now with banking and other apps that I think it's becoming more, that's not necessarily a question, but the why behind it would be beneficial to help educate students about. So when we build out these programs and we do these things at the enterprise level, we still recognize that it's the individual that can cause the greatest challenge to the most robust information security programs and systems. And so we advocate a lot and actively support Cybersecurity Awareness Month, which happens in October. And we use a lot of resources at that time to really steer those to our students. And there's a resource that I think I put out there for everyone to take a look at. It's called Stay Safe Online. That's a partnership with the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. They put out a lot of nice videos, print and web resources that any information security program can use to have cybersecurity awareness in their organization. And so we use a lot of that material. Why reinvent the wheel when someone has done it? And these are professionals and experts that have. So we love to do that. During the month, we really focus all of our marketing, our public service announcements towards students. And usually at the end of the month of October, we have a large event. We have an interactive escape room for students. We create fun activities. We have a big booth, a tent that we on campus where a lot of the students gather a lot of times. And so we make sure that we're out and about where students are. We leverage the digital signage on campus to create those marketing messages just to create that awareness around campus. And we do that also with our what we call back to school events. So at the start of each semester, we send out a communication to our students just around all the technology resources you might need when you're here at the university, but we also incorporate in just some little snippets around cybersecurity awareness and direct them to our website where we have resources. We use blog and social media posts as well to kind of keep that active communication and engagement with our students so that they stay cyber aware. And it works. We are impressed by the reports that we get on phishing and other things that happen on campus. And so we really find it beneficial to have these types of awareness programs. One thing I will say, and it's kind of tied to the AI conversation, but I'm going to pull it in here a little bit, is when you think about how you're using AI, because in terms of that, we really have to be consider security and privacy in those as well. And I think that can be part of the education when you're teaching students, again, in their fluency around AI, this aspect of it as well would be essential.
Those were great, Sonya. I got some ideas that I might steal for our October celebrations. But one of the places that we look to for educating students around cybersecurity at a developmentally appropriate way is the digital citizenship curriculum and what that looks like aligned with our state standards across each grade level. So one of the challenges, I think, and opportunities with digital citizenship is that there's not a class that everyone goes to that is just for this is how to safely and appropriately use technology, because it really should be everywhere. So on the downside of that is, how do we make sure that every student is getting all of the meeting all those standards, because there's not a specific class where we're measuring that. But the other side is that in every context, there's the opportunity to teach that information contextually and also model it. One of the practices that we have around safety is vetting and approving applications for use in our environment. And as you know, the opportunities of what's out there and available to use continues to grow. Our students and staff run into a challenge where they can't use an application because it has not yet been vetted and approved for data sharing. So that I had a teacher just telling me the other day how they ran into that situation. It was an opportunity because that teacher understood the why behind our process and how it is protecting our students and their data, to really talk about that with students, because outside of the SUSD domain, they may create accounts on their own as they get older, and we want them to be able to be thinking about how they're sharing their data and what data they're sharing when they click that, log in with Google button. So that's that. I think the challenge, though, for us, like I said, is to continue to say, well, let's make sure that we are meeting each of those standards somewhere, because it is supposed to be everywhere.
Well, it's just so great to hear what both Sonya and Michelle's institutions are doing, and really at a granular level, educating students as well. One of the things that we certainly have seen at One EdTech in the last 10 years is that student information, student data has really become a currency. So Michelle mentioned vetting applications. So we have a data privacy rubric, the One EdTech Trusted Apps Privacy Rubric, that measures the privacy policies, the terms of service from the platform application or extension, looking at how they collect data, their security posture, what kind of information they provide about how they work with third parties, and advertising, knowing that these are 4 areas that really help us understand their posture when it comes to privacy for that application and extension. And that rubric result is available to our members. We have now vetted over 12,000 applications and extensions, and the rubric is open. So if you'd like to look at the data privacy rubric, there's a link there on your screen. Building on the data privacy rubric, we have a security practices rubric that was developed with our members as well. So bringing our K-12, higher education, and supplier members, we developed this rubric from a holistic approach to have a better understanding of how that application and extension measures security. So they have an opportunity in their self-attestation to report if they have a security framework, if they've had a reportable breach, and an opportunity to go back and make changes as they mature in their security posture as well. So it's become a wonderful resource for our members all around the umbrella of trust and trusted applications and extensions within your ecosystem. And we also want to point out Stay Safe Online, which is a National Cybersecurity Alliance, which is another great resource. And these are just highlighting some of them. We know that there are wonderful resources, some of our partners like COSIN with their trusted learning environment as well. So just can't share enough stories and practices. This is an area that we certainly from kindergarten to higher education and workforce know how important it is to keep our students safe and educate them throughout their whole life and their journey through this process. We do have a question. Not sure if we want to take that question now. For Michelle, it's a question specific to Arizona. So how is your school integrating AI concepts in the K-12 or higher ed curriculum to ensure students are ready for the careers of the future?
So one of the resources we have are the statewide guidelines that were just released in May. And part of those guidelines do have a crosswalk between the state edtech standards and computer science standards and AI literacy. So that's some guidance as far as where these concepts fit in with the standards that we're held accountable for teaching students. I think that what we're also looking for then are additional resources to make available. And I know our state department is one of the things that they're doing is partnering with some of the ed tech vendors that provide some of those AI literacy resources and seeing how we can make those available so that our teachers who are also learning these AI literacy concepts have resources available to instruct students in those standards.
Awesome. And the follow-up to that is, are there learning and career paths set at the early stage?
Career exploration, at a developmentally appropriate age is not something new. So I think even though generative AI feels really new and different and is causing a lot of change, we're also looking for what already exists in our system that we now integrate this into as well. So when we're talking about career exploration, what are we already doing with career exploration that we are adding on these new careers and new opportunities? And even the example of for how long will prompt engineering be a skill or a career, or will we move a little bit past that and have tools that are more purpose built? So it's I would say that that's really what we're leaning on, is where are we already looking at jobs of the future and making sure that we're staying abreast of how generative AI is also changing that field.
I like Michelle's comment there and that approach related to the fact that you look at your existing practice, because what we know is even with these tools, they're evolving. The one you use today will be, one you used yesterday was different today. So I think that's good to kind of look at it at that core fundamental value as opposed to just the technology itself.
Right. Keep those questions coming. Those are great questions from the audience.
Okay, great. So I'll move us on to our third and final topic, which is learning modalities, something that we all know picked up a lot of steam over the COVID pandemic. And the interesting thing here that I really want to emphasize is that I think over the last few years, our thinking about learning modalities has evolved from viewing it as a simple binary. You have a course that is either completely online or it's completely on site, to now recognizing that there are so many different ways to blend and balance online and on-site components to make up one single course experience. And I think also now recognizing the role of the student as a decision maker in that blending and balancing, so that the student actually has a choice in picking how they engage in those different ways. So my headline for this section is that students are going to increasingly expect flexibility and choice in how they engage in education. So again, and next slide, again, taking from our 2024 Teaching and Learning Horizon Report, you can see here that our expert panelists selected as one of the trends that is going to be shaping the future of higher ed teaching and learning is this acknowledgement that students are increasingly demanding access to learning anytime, anywhere. That's really getting at what I was just saying a few moments ago, that the role of the student as a decision maker, as a consumer who is out in the digital marketplace and is developing certain expectations and can demand that their experiences as a learner affords them certain levels of flexibility and choice. Here's a snippet from that report. Students are increasingly interested in having access to multiple modes for learning and more choice when it comes to deciding how to participate. Interest is also growing in self-paced learning and micro-learning, learning content that targets specific skills and is presented in a bite-sized format. This report also highlights supporting mental health as one of our key 6 key technologies and practices shaping the future of higher ed teaching and learning. So here we make a connection between student mental health on one hand, and on the other hand, institutional policies and practices that give students the flexibility they need to accommodate not only their learning preferences, but their well-being as well. So next slide. Flexibility can be built into courses and institutional policies to support mental health. Flexibility in the pace of courses, learning modalities, and due dates can help students juggle all of their responsibilities and support their mental health. And importantly, our students seem to be overwhelmingly supportive of these ideas as well. This is from last year's survey of undergraduate students. We asked almost 2,000 students from 10 different institutions whether they agreed with this sentiment that you see here. Every student should be able to participate in course activities in whatever ways work best for them. And you see here that the overwhelming majority of students, 82%, agree with that sentiment. And that's regardless of their own personal preferences across the board for these students responding to our survey. And this ability to choose, if we go to the next slide, could also be impacting how students are actually experiencing and evaluating their course experiences. So we see here that when students have the choice in how they engage in their hybrid learning experiences, and you see that represented by the green bars, they're significantly more satisfied with their course experiences than students who said that they do not have a choice in how they engage in those courses, represented by the red bars. So could higher ed be moving more in this direction of empowering students with choice? And question for these folks here, are we seeing similar patterns and needs in K-12 education as well as in higher ed? So Sonya, Michelle, Kelly, Monica, in light of these findings, what responsibilities do institutions have to help prepare students for hybrid learning in their education, and what can institutions start to do now to support those responsibilities?
You know, the specific high flex model where students choose from day to day whether they attend class in person or online is not an option that we're able to offer at this point in K-12. But one thing we are excited that we can offer is to allow our in-person students to see where an online course might fit into their schedule. A couple things that are pretty popular would be, PE or math. And I know when people first hear about choosing PE online, it feels like, wait a minute, because they don't want to be healthy. But I think it's actually the opposite. A physical education class in the online environment fits the way a lot of us experience health throughout our lives, where you're just tracking your activity and setting goals for yourself and learning about the benefits of staying active. And then with a course like math, students might choose to take that in an online modality for reasons of, choosing their own personalization. Maybe they want to be able to move quickly through content. Maybe they need more time than what they've experienced in a physical classroom and want to engage with online resources instead. So I think providing that opportunity really empowers students as they learn more about how they best learn. And one of the opportunities in Arizona that came about during the pandemic is our state legislature created the opportunity for school districts to have their own instructional time model. So to really come up with some ideas about where might it fit for us to be looking at attendance a little bit differently than we have traditionally. So it opens up opportunities for some competency-based education or, having students attend in a different way than physically being at the school. So, like I said, not yet letting students choose which days they come to school or not. We actually have a lot of data in K-12 about alignment between physically attending school and success in the classroom. But where can we create opportunities for students to really select the learning modality that works best for them?
During COVID, everyone had to adapt quickly to a shift, and whether you wanted to be in a high flex environment or not, you may have ended up that way. And as we did the evaluation around, the good practices that occurred out of that experience, or what the outcomes were for our students, one thing we found is that some still found that the in-person experience was the better choice for them. So when we talk about all of these different modalities, I think there's still the value in the in-person experience as well. And so how do we create that again? That flexible, I think, is the key term in terms of adapting that in. We still have fully online courses available for students that love that modality of learning. We have the in-person experience. But I think there's some snippets of all of that would be beneficial as we go on, because just think about how it creates flexibility. A lot of people started making available virtual labs. So now if a student wants to needs that high-powered computer or the ability to do some work, it's now in a virtual environment, so they don't have to, especially if they're in a commuter type student, that they would have that available to them. The fact that students have flexibility in their study groups, that they can now have the option, we can meet in the library or we can do that virtually. All of the tools that we use for accessibility, or to make sure things were online and available, but also that makes them accessible. I think those things have enhanced, even if to help the different modalities of preferred modalities of learning for students. I can get it in an audio format. I can get a video format. I can get it outline. There are different tools that help to make that more, to make it easier for students to be able to have access to those things. The access that libraries have provided in terms of online resources and those types of things. So all those things I think have helped to support that. Faculty using getting assistance and training on those different modalities. We are actually launching a flexible teaching and learning workshop that's also tied to micro-credentials. That kicks off this month, and it'll help faculty to be more flexible in their teaching and modality use as they go about these things. So we're excited to have that launch here. And it's been in partnership with our technology department and our Center for Excellence in Teaching and Learning. So a lot of opportunities there. And then I think it's still essential to prepare the student so that they understand what the instructor expects. With this flexibility comes responsibility. And so we want to make sure that they understand how to make sure they're staying on pace and meeting the expectations of the course as they go through this. So it's just really a lot of exciting opportunities and many things I think that came out of COVID that I think were opportunities to expand or enhance what was there and refine to make it truly meet the students where they are.
Great, thank you both for that. I think it's so fitting that, you know, we end with the learner at the end of this conversation and the needs of those learners and being able to be flexible for what they need. We do have a few resources related to learning modalities that we're sharing. One is from Quality Matters. They do their Chloe survey, and this is just kind of a survey of chief online learning officers, so kind of things to know about what is happening in the education landscape. I know it is definitely supportive of the answers that there's a continued need for more online and not traditionally fully online programs, but to have that flexibility to opt for it when you need to. We also use words differently at some institutions than others. So WCET, another organization, had done a digital learning definitions work, so you can see what HyFlex is, what some of those terms that people use are shared there. And then if you want to dive more into that HyFlex model, there is an EDUCAUSE 7 things you should know about that. That's a great resource for you. And I think, you know, we talk about this as being the demands for learners, especially we think about the non-traditional adult learner and trying to balance schedules, you know, life and work and school, and being able to have that flexibility. Being a parent of a high school student, it's the same thing for high school students to be able to balance their life with all of their activities and work and all of those things too. And the more support we give them as they transition and learn how to take responsibility in that flexible environment to make sure they stay on pace and things like that are so important. All right. And so I don't see any questions in the Q&A or chat. I'll give it just a second. If you have one, please put those in. Nope. All right, there's a new one. All right. So as career pathways become increasingly dynamic, how do you support students in continuously capturing and updating their skills to ensure long-term employability and alignment with industry needs?
That question sounds like a plant for our partners in One Ed Tech.
It does, but I'm going to ask Sonya to speak to that. I know they're doing some great work with micro-credentialing and things like that. So I'm going to put her on the spot first.
Okay, I'm gonna say, can you repeat that question?
Yeah, so the question is about how are you helping to support career pathways as they continue to evolve and dynamic? So supporting students to continually capture and update their skills to help ensure their long-term employability.
Yeah, so with what we're doing with micro-credentials, we are looking at ways to not only to take the generic discipline that they're learning in, and then apply the opportunity to layer in micro-credentials related to that. So as they gain competencies in certain skill sets, then they're able to also earn micro-credentials in their coursework as they go about that. And then opportunities to learn, to gain those outside of the classroom. And we talk a lot about transformative learning and how learning happens in many different ways. And so we provide that opportunity for students to have those, but to then be able to earn micro-credentials as well. When we go about that, we do use market research to help inform areas that we feel would be where a micro-credential would be the best opportunity to help students gain those career-ready skills in these new features. I'm trying to think of some other activities that we do related to making sure it's still relevant. I had another thought. It'll come back to me here in just a second, but yeah, I think just talking about AI, one thing that we found is we're working with a department now that they recognize that there's a 3D tool that is now part of the general practice that everyone needs to have. And so they're now looking at how can we introduce this tool in the course because it's what the industry is using. How do we create equity so that it's not a cheap application that they use, but how do we create equity not only to make it available to the student, but also so that they don't have to go out and buy the very expensive computer that you need to be able to run it. And so there's a lot of things like that that we do in looking at, you know, what are the what's out there and the needs of skills that students need, but then to make them available to them as they go about their course. So can't invest in everything. So making those right investments in those tools that you know will have a significant impact on that student's career readiness are some of the things that we're doing.
Wonderful, thank you. And I don't know, Michelle, if you're doing anything specific in Scottsdale, but I know there are some K-12 districts who've started to do some of this as well.
Yeah, I just typed an answer in the question. The Arizona has an ECAP program, their Education Career Action Plan, that students in grades 6 through 12 need to do. And some of the tools that are available for that are starting to have some of the capability to track some of those things. And but sometimes access to that tool ends once you get to 12th grade. So it's not a perfect solution. And I'm really excited about actually the work that One EdTech is doing in this area to look at how do we bring these standards meaningfully into K-12 so that students who are still in our system can benefit from that also, because they're doing amazing things and they really are already building their portfolios and skill sets. And how do we document that in a verifiable way?
Yeah, thank you. And on that note, just as I see Holly had put in the chat, the Learn and Work Ecosystem Library, they're a great partner of us. They have a wealth of resources. So if you're interested in diving more into that, some of our One EdTech stuff is there as well, but also to kind of look at holistic options. And we also have our full Digital Credential Summit that will be in Arizona in March if you're interested in doing an in-person learning on that area. But with that, I think we are at time. So thank you for attending, and thanks panelists for joining and sharing your insights to what you're working on, how you're handling these new challenges and new opportunities. So thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thanks.